Welcome back to the channel. This video is on environmental science, looking at terrestrial polluted sites or facilities and looking at how in America they assess a certain site for a given amount of pollution or contamination and give it a score using a system called the hazard ranking system. This video is going to discuss what this system is and how this score is generated and what happens once a site is given a certain score or a certain number. This is the Earth Science Classroom. The hazard ranking system was established or implemented in 1982, and this comes as a result of the formation of the EPA in 1970. Now, across the United States, certain areas were assessed and identified as being a site or facility of considerable pollution and potential harm to both the ecosystem and humans through various levels of contamination. However, the NPL, which is the National Priorities List, was established in 1980 as a consequence of identifying so many of these sites that were polluted from previous decades across the country. So the National Priorities List is basically identifying certain sites that are of considerable pollution and therefore need to be regulated and assessed accurately. And this is where the hazard ranking system was implemented, was to provide that consistent and accurate assessment of a site through different criteria to produce a score that would give a quantitative analysis of that site. So the hazard ranking system, a score, a quantitative number, was given to a site or facility across the country to signify its level or degree of pollution and therefore the amount of attention and money and action that site is required to remediate it and potentially clean it up for future use. Now, this score is calculated using 4 different criteria, which include the air migration, soil migration, groundwater migration, and surface water migration of those pollutants, and therefore the level of contamination and the concentration of pollutants. And then a score is provided for that site initially, which could be between 0 and 100. And if it's close to 100, it is more polluted, more dangerous, more hazardous, has to have more attention given to this site. And if it's towards 0, obviously less polluted, less concentration, less focus, and then obviously less money applied to the site to clean it up. In order for any polluted site to get a hazard ranking score, it has to go through a sequence of events, 4 different sequences. The first one is the establishment and identification and notification of a certain site that's polluted by local, state, regional, or federal personnel. Then it goes to that primary assessment where the EPA or the local authorities will go in and provide a primary initial assessment of that site. And then once the site is been confirmed to be polluted and deemed necessary to provide further information on the pollutants, the concentration, and the level of general pollution and health of the site, then you get that site investigation or SI, which would be comprehensive in terms of the chemical analysis, the pollutants, and the sampling of soil, water, and any kind of leaching or extent of pollution around the site or facility. And then finally, once that happens and the 4 criteria are analyzed, the score is provided, and this is the hazard ranking score, goes from 0 to 100, and then if it is above a certain number, then further action is applied. In order to obtain a hazard ranking system score from 0 to 100, during that site investigation, large-scale chemical analysis and investigations occur on that site or facility over these 4 criteria. So looking at the movement of water, both on the surface and underground, through migration and the concentration, looking at the exposure of the soil, the contaminants, the pollutants, and obviously in the air. Now, all of these 4 criteria are naturally interconnected, and the analysis of each one will gather or produce a more comprehensive understanding of the pollutants in that site. For example, the drinking wells and aquifer and subsurface geology will give an idea of the exposure with the soil and how the surface water contaminants and the point source and the chemical analysis will eventually affect the groundwater if there is high porosity and permeability. And looking at the air migration in terms of the background levels versus what is currently being recorded at that site, and compare and contrast the characteristics of the gases and of course the possible migration and spread of those pollutants. Once the hazard ranking system has produced a score for a particular site or facility after the site inspection or the site investigation, the score is used to determine the level of importance, the level of concern, or the level of action that is applied to that site going forward. For example, if the score is below 28.5 from the 4 criteria assessment, then it basically is deemed not worthy or not polluted enough or not dangerous enough or hazardous enough to warrant further remediation plans being put in place for that site. So it comes under the NFRAP, which is no further remedial action planned. Basically, the site is left as is. Now there'll be future assessments on that site to then reproduce a new hazard ranking score. If a site or facility acquires or is given a hazard ranking score above 28.5, then it is on the application to be added to the NPL, which is the National Priorities List. Basically, it's all the sites that are extremely polluted, dangerous, hazardous in the United States to any humans or the ecosystem. Therefore, the higher the HRS number is, the more intensive the remediation, the action that has to be taken on that site to combat any future issues with health of humans in the area and obviously the ecosystem. So this NPL is a federal list and it is constantly being updated. Some sites are being removed because they've been cleaned up, they've been remediated. Some sites are being reassessed to give a different number based on the current pollution levels. This is an ongoing process. If it goes on to the NPL, the National Priorities List, then you get more money allocated from the Superfund, which is CERCLA and SARA, the federal agencies overseeing the cleanup process of these sites, and then we can start to put in a plan of action to remediate the pollutants, to curb migration through groundwater, surface water, air, and obviously clean up the soil to a point where the levels are below 28.5 or even 0, meaning the pollutants or pollution is no longer evident in that site. This is the Earth Science Classroom. Thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, please subscribe, like, and share. And if you want more content and videos on Earth Science, please check out my channel.